to convey like how Spark works, right? So to keeping in mind what I'm planning today, I'll be going to explain you how the data will load into the HDFS, how it will store into the HDFS, if it is stored into the HDFS, what format it is, then if while loading the data, if something goes wrong, how it will handle. So we are going to discuss that first. If time permits, I'll be introducing you a MapReduce, then I'll be explaining you what is a Spark. Okay, so to give a brief, very high level introduction about the MapReduce and Spark before getting into the write flow into HDFS, MapReduce is a processing. I can say it's a processing layer, or I can say it is a framework, or it is a programming paradigm where it will process the data parallelly whatever the data is loaded into HDFS. Okay, so let me connect this. Yeah. So today is the last demo, guys. So today we will be completing the demo, and from Monday onwards we will be starting the regular classes. So from Monday onwards we'll be seeing the what is the big data, what is the HDFS. So we'll be understanding about that. Okay, so let's. Oh, it's already there here also. Okay, so we have seen some introduction about what is a HDFS. So let's talk little about the MapReduce. Then I'll give a little introduction about the Spark. Then I will show you how the data will write into HDFS. Okay, MapReduce. The MapReduce is two operations, guys. These are two operations or two operators, you can say, right? It says that map and reduce. It is actually map and reduce. It is a programming model, or it is a framework which will process the data, in a parallel fashion. The data should be in a distributed manner in the HDFS. So as I said before, Hadoop came with two components. Whenever you say Hadoop, it is just two components only. So people will be telling that Hive, HBase, those are all is different. Those are different tools. But your Hadoop come with two components. One is HDFS, which is for the storing the data. It is a file system. It is mainly for storing the data. It will tells that how to store the data into HDFS. And other part is MapReduce. Other part is MapReduce. This component tells that how to process the data, whatever the data you have loaded into HDFS. Okay, we have seen a little introduction about the HDFS. Let's talk something about MapReduce. Okay. So MapReduce is, as I said, it is a map and reduce. It is map and reduce. What to map and what to reduce? We need to understand that. As HDFS, your MapReduce also follows master-slave architecture. What is the master-slave architecture? Guys, I'm talking about MR1. Okay, I'm talking about MR1. What is the MR1? Hadoop has three versions now. I think recently, last month or before month, Hadoop 3 has been launched. I think a very short period. It was still in alpha phase. Okay, alpha release. So Hadoop has three releases. One is Hadoop 1. And it Hadoop 1.x. I can say it has some versions. Hadoop 2. They found some limitations in Hadoop 1 and they come up with the Hadoop 2. And now Hadoop 3. It is still Hadoop 3. .0.1 underscore alpha version. So Hadoop 1 was using MapReduce 1. So the architecture and a little, even HDFS also some changes are there. Okay, when you will see that. So I'll be showing you what was the HDFS 1 uh, in Hadoop 1 what was the HDFS, in Hadoop 2 what was the HDFS, and what was the MapReduce in Hadoop 1 and what was the MapReduce in Hadoop 2. We'll be seeing the both APIs, and there is something called MapReduce 2. Okay, so we will talk about the both. The MapReduce 2 will call YARN. MapReduce 2 will call YARN, yet another resource negotiator. It is yet another resource negotiator. It is, I can say, YARN is like, it's like an operating system for your HDFS. It is like an operating system, but it's not an operating system. It is a cluster management. It is a cluster manager, I can say, who manages their cluster. We will talk more about the YARN. So why we need YARN? What was the problem with the MapReduce 1? Those things we will see in a very detail. Each and every component we will be discussing. Okay, so I cannot keep everything and mix in a single demo, so that will make you confused. So let's go one by one. So the MapReduce 1, whatever the data I have loaded into HDFS, right, that data we will process in two operations. First is map operation and the second one is reduce operation. So here we need to understand how your map operation and how your reduce operations works. So the map operation, as I said, your MapReduce also follows master slave architecture. It also follows master slave architecture. It will also have something called job tracker. Job tracker, and there will be slaves, task trackers. What are they? They are not physical machines. They are daemons. What is a daemon? Daemon is a background service or background process which will be running in the background in Linux machines or in any machine. If any service is running in the background, if any process is running in the background, that process or that service will call a daemon service. So these are not physical machines. I can say ideally you can say it is a name node. We'll say it is a name node, and these are called data nodes. These are called data nodes. This is name node. In that you will be having job tracker service. These are data nodes. So your job tracker service will be running in the name node, or your job tracker service can be a different machine. Your job tracker can be a different machine. It can run in the different machine, and your name node can be a different machine. That is possible. When it comes to task tracker, this task tracker has to run within the name node only. Sorry, within the data node only. Why? There is a specific reason for it. I'll tell, and now I mean we will see that. Okay, these are all will be running in the data node. These are all will be running in the data node. Now, when a client submit any job, what is a job? Job is nothing but, let's say I have some Amazon data, which was their last 6 months data. From this data, I want to find out how many new registrations, how many people purchased a mobile, how many people purchased home appliance, how many people purchased books. I want to know that aggregations values. And let's say but today is Shivaratri, so I want to give some promotions. Let's assume that they're processing a 1 week before, and they want to understand what was the sales, and there is the some vacation is or some occasion is going to come. I want to do some promotions on that day. So what they will do, first this 6 months data will be loaded into HDFS. This data will be loaded into HDFS. After loading the data, they want to process. So to process, whatever the logic we write, whatever the code, whatever the business logic we'll write, we will keep in a jar file. We will bundle, we'll write all our class files, our Java files, and we'll build it, and we will create a bundle. Okay, so that bundle will call jar file. We'll bundle it. This jar file contains our logic. Okay, so this code, what are the code you have written, that is a jar, what are the jar you are running, in the cluster, that jar is nothing but a job. The task is nothing but a job. That application is nothing but our job. Okay, so now I'll be launching this jar, I'll be running this jar by using, there is a command called Hadoop jar. Hadoop jar path and all. I will explain the complete syntax later. So Hadoop jar, by using Hadoop jar, I'll be executing this program. While I'm executing this program required input. This is my input, and this program produces the output, the jar file. The program produces the output. Where you want me to keep output? Okay, your jar bundle will take input and output path. It will take a path. Now when I submit a job, there will be something called job client here for me. So as soon as I submit a jar here, the job client will talk to the name node. Actually, it will go and directly talk to the job tracker, saying that I got a request to process some data, and they have given me input path, and that input path known by whom? Name node only, right? That input path known by name node only, because he is the person who maintain the metadata about the data, right? This job tracker will go and talk to this guy and ask for, hey, give me the locations, I want to process this data they're asking me to process. And your name node refer the metadata and will give the locations. Let's say the data is there, machine 1, machine 3, machine 5. Let's assume that. Okay, the data is there, these 3 machines. Okay, and only 3 blocks. Let's assume that. Only 3 blocks in 3 machines it is there. Then your job tracker knows all these machines, the task trackers are running. Your job tracker is a master, right? Your job tracker is a master. A task tracker, it knows that, and all the machines, all the data nodes, the task trackers are running. And your job tracker will tell to the task tracker saying that, hey, in your machine, this block is there in this location. You go ahead and process it. And the task tracker, as soon as it tell to the job tracker, as soon as tell to the task tracker will launch JVM. It is not a thread based. It will launch a fresh JVM. It means it will launch a processor. It will launch a processor, and they will start running the job. Okay, and when running the job, 2 operations. As I said, 2 operations. One is the map operation. Another one is the reduce operation. So first the map operation, whatever the data you have loaded into this, right? It will map with that. It will execute some logic. You will be writing your code. Okay, here you will be writing some code in the 2 operations. One is a map operation. What has to be done at the map level? What has to be done at the reduce level? You will be writing that code. The map will be mapping to all your blocks, data blocks in the machine 1, and other map will be processing in the machine 2, and other map will be processing in the machine 5. They will process 3 maps. Same logic. Logic is same, but 3 processors, 3 maps. The logic is same, but the data is different. Now, this map 1, it will give some output. Map 2 will give some output. Map 3 will give some output. And it will collect the output from these 3. There is another phase called, we will talk more about these phases and all. sort and shuffle based on the keys. Your MapReduce framework will work based on the key value pair, guys. Whatever the data you give, it will divide into key value pair. Whatever the data you give image, you give video, you give whatever the data you give, the data will be divided into the key value pair. Each data will have a respective input formats. So to understand all these things, first we need to understand what is the HDFS in detail. Then while explaining the MapReduce, we need to understand what is the input format, how the data will be processed, and there is something called input split. There is something called input format. Input format tells you that what type of input it is. For your job, what type of input it is. Is it text file? Is it a sequence file? Is it a compressed file? So you need to specify that what type of input you are going to process in this. Okay, you need to tell text file or sequence file or XML file, or it is a JSON data, what type of data you are going to process, or a CSV file, what type of file it is. You need to tell that. We will tell based on the input format. There are some existing input formats, there are some not existing format. We need to write our own custom input formats. We need to write our logic. So that input format will divide your data into key value pairs. Okay, so the map output also will come in the form of key value pairs. So then it will go to sort and shuffle, then reduce will work. The reducer will be launched on all the outputs of mapper, all the outputs of the mapper. See here, multiple mappers are launched and one reducer is launched. By default it is 1. You can change it, you can keep it 10, you can keep it 20. That can be configured, we will see that later. Now the final result will be the reducer is aggregator. This guy is the aggregator who first initial operation is map operation. He will just go and process some logic and it will give some output as a key value pair. And this guy also gives some output and this guy also gives some output. And there is something called sort and shuffle that it will sort based on the keys and it will group it. One key, multiple values. One key, multiple values. It's possible, right? Because the same key will be there here. The same key can be there in another block. The same key can be there in another block. Let's take, I want to process mobiles. Some data is there here in this piece of data, some data is there here, some data is there here, some data is there. So this data I may have something called mobile, right? So mobile, how many times the mobile was there here? One time. Mobile can be 2 times, and here also there will be some mobile can be possible, right? In this data also, in this data also mobile can be possible, right? So your mobile is the key and how many times it came is the value. So here after sort and shuffle it will be only one key mobile and collection of values 1 comma 2 comma 1 comma 1 comma, like this. This is collection of values, this is our key. This is called sorting by key, grouping by value. Sorting by key and grouping by values. So then it will go to all mobiles, registrations, books, TV, all will be sorted in the alphabetical order, and it will send to reducer. And here the reducer will also some other logic to doing aggregations, and the final output will be returned to you. The final output will be written to you. So this final output you can keep it in Hive, you can keep it in any database like NoSQL databases like Redshift or HBase or Cassandra, wherever you want to keep. And from here you can connect the Tableau for the reporting purpose, and you can show the reports. You can show the reports. This is how your MapReduce works. I really didn't take you into MapReduce, and we'll be having a separate deep dives of each in MapReduce and HDFS things. This is how the MapReduce works. So whatever the data was loaded into the cluster, and each data piece, your map logic will be applied, and it will process and it will give some output, and there will be one more layer in between the map and reduce. Then that's called sort and shuffle. There are multiple layers, guys. There are multiple layers. So not only sort and shuffle, there is something called partitioning, there is something called combining, there is something called copy phase. So there are multiple phases are there. So here I'm to make it a very simple, make you simple understanding. I'll show you only three phases: map phase, sort and shuffle phase, and reduce phase, and it will process the data in that form. Okay, so here what is happening in the map reduce? So this is the, as I said, your map reduce is a processing part. Even though you are using Hive, let's say to write the MapReduce code, guys, we should know either Python or Java. C++ also you can write. Okay, you can write it, but you have to go with some other libraries. You need to do it. But I never did it in the C++, and I have done in the Python. I have done in the Java. Okay, so you can write your MapReduce code either in Python or you can Java, and even C++ also supports. But you need to write a different stream for that. So coming to if you want to write a MapReduce, you should be good in the I mean, I'm just telling you a limitation. It's not a limitation. It is one of the prerequisite. To write your Java, to write your MapReduce code, either we need to know Python or Java. Okay. So anyway, Java will be teaching as part of the course. So nothing to worry about it. So what is happening here? The MapReduce is a process engine, or I can say it's a process layer. Even though if you are going with a Hive, even though you are going with a pig, you're going with a pig. What is happening internally, even your scoop, okay, when you are using these tools internally, they use this MapReduce only for the processing. They're using internally MapReduce only for processing. Or now different tools are there. You have a Tej, you have a Spark. There are different kind of tools are there where you can go ahead and change this instead of using MapReduce, you can go ahead and change that. No, I don't want to use the MapReduce because the MapReduce has some limitations. So I want to use Tej. I want to use something Pesto. If it is a Hive, you can go with a Pesto engine. So or you want to go with Spark, you can change that. It is possible. It is configurable. So nothing to worry about it. Okay. So what is the limitations of the MapReduce? Okay, what is the limitations of the MapReduce? So I'll tell you very no high level. So then I'll jump to the Spark. Then as I said the content, I'll show the HDFS again. So MapReduce, first it will take the data from the hard disk. It will take the input from the hard disk. It will take to who from the hard disk. All the process will go in the RAM only, guys. All the process will go in the RAM memory. Any process, if you take any device, any process will go in the RAM. It will take to RAM. It will start process the data. Then the output, whatever the output is coming, it is writing into again a hard disk. Whatever the output is coming, again is writing into hard disk. It is called intermediate data. Intermediate data. Your map output will call intermediate data. Then again it will be loaded into RAM for the reducer process. Again this data will be loaded into RAM for the reduce process. So your reducer will be launched. Again your reducer is final output is again writing into hard disk. This is one iteration, guys. This is one iteration for one job. If I have multiple iterations, this everything I need to repeat again. Take input from the hard disk, put into RAM, process it, again put into hard disk, again read it, again process it, again put into hard disk. So what is happening here? What is happening here? So many times you are writing into hard disk. And writing into hard disk and reading from hard disk is very difficult. It's not difficult, it is a time consuming process. That too we're dealing with the big data. We're dealing with a huge data, right? So what is happening here? It is taking so much of time. When it comes to the Spark, we are eliminating this. We're eliminating this. The intermediate data writing into hard disk. We'll directly write RAM to RAM. The whole data will be keeping in the RAM, and we'll be processing the RAM. We'll be processing in the RAM. You may say that if you're keeping everything in the RAM, we need to have a huge RAM, right? Which is a costly, right? If you see, guys, from past few years, the RAM prices are gone very low. Only if you see the RAM prices before and now, so the RAM prices are really gone down. So now people are more interested on processing speed, not on the hardware cost. Hardware cost, they're not worried about the hardware cost. And that too If you go with the cloud services, still is very cheaper. Instead of maintaining your in-house cluster means their own in office their cluster. Instead of that, they're going with the cloud services. When they're going for the cloud services, they're getting still cheaper than this. Still cheaper than this. Okay, so not only one, this is the difference, this is the one of the major difference. It's not only the difference, and your MapReduce has some limitations, like, so I don't have a, suppose I want to do graphics. I want to generate some graphs using the data. So your MapReduce does not have a direct API for it. But when it go to Spark, you have graphics libraries. So something I want to need something or like machine learning. Your MapReduce does not have it, but your Spark it is. It has the Spark has the inbuilt machine learning libraries. Right, there are some major differences like that we will be seeing in very detailedly when going classes. Okay, so this is because of these limitations, your MapReduce is getting, your Spark is taking more becoming more popular than MapReduce. Okay, and it doesn't mean that without MapReduce can I have a Spark. Yes, you can have a Spark, but internally if you closely observe the APIs and if you go ahead and see the source code of the MapReduce, sorry, Spark, internally still it uses the MapReduce. Your Spark uses the MapReduce libraries internally. It has so many other advantages, like you have a data support layers, you have a data sets, you have a data frames, and there is some are called RDD, resilient data distribution data, distributed data. So there are so many advantages here. There are so many I can say so many uh, plus points in the Spark than your MapReduce. Because of that, your Spark is becoming very popular. We'll be talking each and every component. Okay, so this is how it works. This is how it works, your MapReduce and the Spark. So we'll be talking each and every point in detail, and what is the RDD, how it will work. We'll go in deep level, and what is the Spark, how it will process the data. Your Spark has data, the storage is same, guys. Your storage is same. Your Spark or MapReduce are just a frameworks for the processing. Again, either you have to go with a HDFS, or you have to go with a HBase, or you have to go with any other file system like S3. Any distributed file system you have to go with. The storage is remains same. The storage is never change. Okay, the only change comes in the processing. The processing, how you are processing. The way you process is different in Spark, and the way you process in the MapReduce is different. In the Spark also we will be using the same concepts. Whatever the concepts are there in the MapReduce, the same concepts we'll be using. When it comes to Spark, you have a more operators. When you see in the MapReduce, you have only two operators, map and reduce. Whatever the code you want to write, you have to write in between these two operators. But the Spark come with so many operators. So many operators are there in the MapReduce. Those in the Spark. Those will call transformations and actions. Few operations will call transformations and few operations will call actions. They have very nice difference between these two, and that's Spark is a lazy evaluation and MapReduce is not. So all these things we'll be discussing very detailedly in the coming classes. Any doubts, guys, still here? So I don't want to give everything in a single shot. Let's ask, do you guys have any doubt? Any doubts?
Ravi, this is Ashwani.
Yeah, tell me, Ashwini.
Yeah, to write, to work on MapReduce, you are saying we need Java knowledge on that one.
Mm.
But if you don't have Java knowledge, what will be the case? Any other tools we can use it and we can write the code?
Yep. So very good question. So most of the people has the same doubt because the people are from the different backgrounds. Very nice question to.
Right.
So here, the first thing I would like to tell you that anyway Java I'll be teaching here. Still, if you face some difficulty to understand or difficulty to learn the Java, you have some tools like Hive for the process the structured data. Hive is like SQL like language, as similar as your SQL. The Hive is. Even the pig also looks similar. Okay, the pig also looks similar, but it is a Latin script, but it also looks similar to SQL. Okay, so you no need to write actually MapReduce jobs in this. Internally, it converts your queries into MapReduce. You no need to write it. That's the one. So other one is, so if you learn Java, you don't need to learn Java very advanced Java or something. You need to learn only the core Java part. Core Java. What is a class? What is object? How you write a class? How you extend? I mean, like inheritance, polymorphism. You need to know only the OOPS concepts, and you need to know how to deal with the strings, and you need to know what is the exceptions and collections. Nothing else. You know, you're not going to learn threads, and you're not going to learn very advanced things in Java. But if you know it well and good, it will make your life easy. Okay, so without
Okay.
knowing Java also, we can go ahead and work with the Hadoop or Spark. There are so many other libraries are available. There are other so many tools are available. So coming to the Spark, yes, the Spark we will write either in Scala, we will write either in Python. You can also find the order, guys. The most of the people prefer Scala, and then next priority is for Python, the next is Java. So why you brought the Java is lost and lost priority? Because I can tell one thing, that the tool itself is designed using Scala, and writing code in the Scala is very easy than Java. In the Java you have to write so many lines of code, but when it comes to Scala it will be very less lines of code. And if you Java, I can tell you a simple example. If you're in Java, if you're writing 100 lines, in the Scala it can be complete in 1 or 2 lines. 1 or 2 lines of code. And also I would like to tell you the initial version of the Spark, it is Spark 1.0, I think 0.x or 1.0, 1.2 I think. The Spark, the whole framework code itself, it's a very less lines. I think less than 1,000 or within 10, with very less number of lines. But when you see MapReduce code, earlier version of the MapReduce code, which was more than six millions of lines, or 60,000 or 6 lakhs of uh, lines. So in the Java, you have to write so many. So that's the beauty of the Scala. That's not beauty of the Spark. That's the beauty of the Scala. So because of the Scala, it is the number of lines are getting reduced. Not getting reduced. It is giving that flexibility where you can do so many operations in the single lines of code. Because your Scala also works on the JVM, but in the Java you have to tell each and everything to your Java. But in Scala you no need to tell. Your Scala can it can assumes and it can take as a granted. I'll show you that each and every component. That is the reason. And Linux also we should know, because we will be working on the Linux. We should know the Linux as well. But even I'll be showing that Linux commands. Yep. Even we'll be having separate sessions for the Scala and separate sessions for the Python. So which we required for the Spark, which we'll be writing for the Spark. And whatever the Scala, whatever the Python I'm going to teach, which is with respect to the Spark, and with respect to the Spark streaming, and with respect to Spark I can say, and which are using in industry, which are the, let's say I have some use cases. Based on the use cases we'll going with what need to be used in that. So Scala and Python, they are languages, so they have so many things available in the Scala. So so we don't need to know each and everything there, as similar as Java. Java also has so many things, we don't need to know each and everything from Java. Okay, any other doubts, guys? So else I'll just jump into the next topic. I want to show you how the data is getting right into HDFS. Then we can have a discussion later. Any other doubts?
Yeah, Vira, are you going to complete Hive part also?
Yes, I'm going to complete a Hive as well. I'm going to teach Hive. So see, guys, I have sent some my content to the most of the guys. The content contains more into HDFS, MapReduce, Java, Scala, Python, Spark. But there are some tools like a Flume, like a Woozy, People might be surprising what they are. I'll be explaining those also as part of the course. Even though my content is not showing about the flume, even though my content is not showing about the Uzi and the pig, it is not talking about the pig, it is not talking about the scoop. We'll be covering all these things as part of the course. That's why the course content, as I was telling that, that's the reason our course will be very a lengthy course, like more than 100 hours. We'll be seeing each and every component. Once you complete this course, it should not be in like if someone asks, do you know that tool, we should not be the blank mind. Oh, no, you should say that yes, I know, I have some introduction about the tool.
Okay, what are the tools we are focusing mainly on learning big data?
So that's what these are the tools, your HDFS and Hive, Pig, HBase. I'll be telling you HBase as well.
These are all deep courses, right? Not for introduction, right?
No, so HBase is a introduction, like intermediate level, and Woozy, Flume, Pig, Scoop, and all deep level. Hive, these are all deep because those
Oh,
are most important.
Hive, Scoop, Pig, Flume, and
Yes,
Woozy, right?
yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, let's jump to next. Okay, now yesterday we have seen how to write the data into HDFS very high level. Today we are going to see a very detailed, how it is works and all, because we need to understand that. That's a very most important thing to understand how the data will be written into HDFS, right? So in to write the data into HDFS, we have something called, some commands are there. Okay, so there are some commands to write the data into from your HDFS to sorry, from other file system to HDFS. So I'll be taking one of the command from that. Hadoop file system hyphen put or copy from local. You can use any other command. You have some three different commands are there, and here also instead of using Hadoop FS, you can use the HDFS DFS. We will talk about them, and you will give the source from where I need to get the data, and you need to give a destination where I need to put the data. This destination is your HDFS destination. The source is like your local file system or any other file system allocation, right? So now as soon as I execute this command I will be executing in one terminal, or I can say one machine. That machine will call as a client machine, or you can say it is edge node, edge machine. Most of the people will be calling client, or most of the people will be calling as edge node. I'll show you more differences between what is the edge node and what is a cluster. Okay, so as soon as you execute this, we will be having something called HDFS client. Nothing, guys. If you are executing the HDFS commands in one place, that machine will call as a HDFS client. If you are using a MapReduce, if you're running a MapReduce job here instead of Hadoop FS, if you are using Hadoop jar, the same machine only will call job client. Either you can call HDFS client when you're executing HDFS commands. When you're executing the MapReduce related code, you can say it's a job client. When you're launching any job, you can call it a job client. So what the job client will do, this job client will talk to, it will create, actually it will call a create method. There is a create method. I'm taking you a little deeper into each and every API. There is some API called distributed file system. In this API, there is a method called create method. It will call the create method. As soon as it calls this create method on this, your distributed API instance, it will go and connect to the name node. Before connecting before connecting to the name node, your distributed API requires some information. So it will connect to the name node using RPC protocol. Okay, RPC protocol, remote procedure call. So before connecting this, before connecting this, it requires some information. So that information, let me put it here. This is my file. As I'm taking the same example, let's say this is my Amazon file. As soon as I give this file to my client first will look at the data and it will check whether the source is available or not. And source is available, it will break the data into pieces. The first it will break the data into pieces. That piece is called block. The block size is based on the configuration or based on the version we are using. Let's assume that you are 64 MB. The Hadoop 2 it is 128 MB. So we'll be using Hadoop 2 only. So it will break the data into pieces and it will take the piece 1 and it will call the create method on this API. This API will go to the name node along with some information. That information is block information, replication factor, and the path of the file. Then it will go and talk to the name node saying that I want to write this data into HDFS, and your name node to do some validations like whatever the user is executing, whatever the user he's executing this command, he's authorized. Like does he has a permissions? Does he has a permissions? And whatever the destination you are giving, the destinations already exist. Is it exists already? If it is not exist and he is authorized, it will respond to him. I mean, actually him means client machine. It will respond with another instance called FS data output stream, file system data output stream. These are all classes, guys. You no need to worry. These are all Java classes. Okay. So as soon as he got this instance, he will do these validations, guys. Once he is success, then only. Otherwise, if anything is fail, it will throw IO exception saying that no, some problem has been. He does not have access or the file is already exist. Then your HDFS client will start ask this guy to this guy will call. There is something called write method. This guy will call write method on this. As soon as he call the write method on this guy has the data, no? This has the data. He will start writing the data, right? So what he will do, he will convert the piece 64 MB block. The 64 MB block, it will convert into packets and he will put into, there is something called data queue. There is something called data queue. He'll put the data into data queue of the small packets. And this data queue will have, there is something called data streamer. This all happens in the client machine, guys. These are all happening in the client machine. Whatever I'm showing here, these are all happening in the client machine. This is all happening in the client machine. Will not be knowing this, whether it's happening or not. This all will be happening in the client machine. Okay. Now the data streamer will connect to the name node again and they're asking me to write a data where you want me to write a data. Now your name node refers his metadata information about the systems. He looks for his metadata information about the systems, and by following the policies, as we say, block placement policy and rack awareness, he will give some mission IP addresses, and he will sort and give the mission IP addresses based on the distance from the client machine. Based on the distance from the client machine, he will sort and give the missions. So why it is giving 3 missions? Because the 3 is the replication factor. Then this data streamer, once the data streamer got the response from the name node, it will take the IP address and it will create a data pipeline for your HDFS, for your data nodes. Data pipeline, it will create the data pipeline for this data nodes. Anyway, the data nodes will be connected to the name node and they will be responding with heartbeat. that solves RPC, remote procedure call. Anyway, they will be sending heartbeat to this guy. This is, assume that this is 1, this is 2, this is not 2, 3 and 5, and assume that there are missions in between. Okay, so I have taken 3 missions because those are selected missions. Now your data streamer will create the data pipeline with these IP addresses, and these missions will be, this guy will start sending the packet here, and this mission will send to the next mission, and this mission will send to the next mission, and they will be writing the data into these missions, and your 5th mission will give the acknowledgement saying that success, and this guy will give the acknowledgement saying success, because this guy will be, the packet will be having header and tail, right? They will be maintaining that information. And there is something called acknowledgement queue in the client mission. There is something called acknowledgement queue who will maintain this acknowledgement, who is waiting for the acknowledgement from these missions. Who is waiting for the acknowledgement from these missions. And once it is success, and it will say that it is success, and you go with the next. You go with the next block. Packet wise packet, it will complete once the all the data has been loaded into the HDFS, and it will close the connection, and it will go with the next block. It will go with the next block. Again, the same process will happen. And as soon as they are storing in the data nodes, right, they will respond to the name node saying that, yes, I have loaded, I have received this, I have received this block, I have received this block, I have received this block. Like that, these data nodes will report to the name node. So name node will keep in your metadata. It has its own metadata in the form of FS image and edit log. And this information will be writing in edit log for the time being, then it will be merged to HDFS later, FS image later. That we will talk about the merge process. That we will talk about the merge process later. So as soon as they report, we received Amazon block 1, we received the block 1 to mission 135. So you may have a doubt what will happen while it's processing, the mission 1 is failed. So it will nothing to worry, because still your data stream knows that I have 2 more missions, and it has something called replication, minimum replication factor. Minimum replication factor is 1, guys. So we will talk about these configurations. I'll show the configurations, not talk about it. We'll be showing the, and maximum is 512, and the normal is 3. The default is 3, whatever we are using, minimum. So when this data node is failed, it's not to worry. Your data streamer will close the connection with this machine, and it will go and connect to the other machine, because it knows that if at least 1 copy is stored successfully, it is fine, no problem with it. Okay, so this is how the data will be writing into the HDFS. This is the process happening internally while writing the data into HDFS. This is how the data is getting written into the HDFS. Once the data is stored, and all the data is stored in HDFS, all these connections will be closed. We will not be knowing this. As soon as you execute a Hadoop FS put command, it will just go ahead and put it. You will not be knowing all these things are happening internally or not. This is how internally it happens. What we have seen is internal things. Okay, so that's it, guys. So I'm leaving 5 minutes to you. If you guys have any doubts, please go ahead and ask me. And from Monday, we will be continuing the regular classes. So by Monday, I'll be gathering all the students who are confirmed, who is seriously attending this batch. I'll be confirming, and I'll be freezing the batch. So then once the batch is freezed, we can continue the classes. So any doubts, you guys can please go ahead and ask.
And this is Vasant here.
Tell me, Vasant.
The data stream, if it's if one node is failed, so since the replication factor is 3, so the name node will assign some other node so that it will be replicated across all the 3 machines.
No,
all the 3 data.
Yeah, I understand. So once your data streamer get the IP addresses from the name node, okay, it will not go and talk to again, give me some more. Okay, it will never go and ask you one more time. So whatever this, there is some replication factor called minimum replication factor. Okay, what this minimum replication factor is? One copy. Okay, so as soon as it is okay to copy one copy in any of the machines, the job will success. So when it is failed, the machine 1 is failed, it will close the connection from this and your data stream will go and connect to the other machine. Your data stream will go and connect to the other machine. Because why it is connecting other machine? Because I need to, at least I need to copy one copy. I still have 2 more machines. I can go ahead and store in these machines, right?
So the question is that, so in the configuration, we are putting any minimum and maximum replication factor.
Minimum and maximum, there is something called the normal replication factor, which is 3.
Okay. So the question is that, so after name node assigned, so assume a minimum replication factor is 2. After the name node assigned the maximum is 3, and after the name node assigned the 3 IP address, what if two things like got not responded by when the data stream is querying it? So how it will work in that case?
Very good question. Here, what is this question is, my minimum replication factor also 3, my normal replication factor also 3, my normal RF also 3. So in this case, if any one of the data node fail, it will not store any copy. The job will also fail, because to store the data, it requires 3 data nodes.
Okay.
So in that
Okay.
case, complete job will fail. None of the copy will be stored.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that it will not query the name and node again, and
No,
if in
no,
case if
no,
the,
no. Okay, so let me check here. Block size is okay. In the Hadoop 1 is the block size is 64 MB, and the Hadoop 2 the block size is 128 MB. In the Hadoop 3 also the block size is 128 MB only. As of now they didn't change. Okay. And other question is Hadoop FS put source and destination is the Unix command we need to use. Yes, Kranti, it looks like a Unix command. It is not actually Unix command. It is a Hadoop FS command. Like your Hadoop distributor HDFS is a file system. It also has its own commands. It also has their own file system. Okay. So what is the block size in 3x? I think as per my knowledge, it is 120 MB only. Anyway, you can go ahead and change it. It's not like it is fixed. So in Hadoop 2 or Hadoop 1 also, if you don't want to process with the default value, you can either decrease or you can increase. No problem in it. Okay. So any other doubts, guys? Okay. And also I want you guys to okay, I think everyone has my mobile number, and please ping me all your numbers from WhatsApp. So what I will do, I'll create a group, then we'll be discussing the group, and I'll be sending the updates in the group. So what time we'll be having the class and what topics we are going to talk, and any doubts we can discuss in the group. So I'll be creating a closed group for us, and we'll be discussing in that.
One
Ravi?
question, Ravi. If all the nodes will fail, how it will run our jobs? Is it applicable? Fault tolerance will be applicable here?
No, the fault tolerance will be applicable when the one node goes down. So all nodes goes down, there is no fault tolerance. The job will fail.
Then what is the solution for this?
Okay, you're talking about, see here. See, you were talking about like only 3 machines or whole cluster is down.
Three missions.
Okay, so there is something called resubmitting the jobs. Okay, and it will try 4 times. It will try 4
Okay.
times. It will try to put the data into 4 times. If the 4 attempts are failed, the job will fail. So you have to relaunch the job. So when you relaunch the job, what will happen? It will identify the different machines and it will store in that.
Oh, is it happens in production as well?
See, in the production, okay, very good question. So what you were trying to say? If I submit a job now, the job is failed. So you have to relaunch the job again in the next schedule.
Okay.
Ravi, I have one question.
Okay.
Question is that if I go for 128 MB of block size
Mm-hmm.
and I have the data of 70 MB,
Okay.
and 70 MB will be written on the 128 block size, and rest of the block size for that one. Example, you will get around 58 MB of size.
Okay.
Does it goes to be reserved, or it won't be allowed to save some other data on that one?
So it won't be reserved for that file. The whatever the file you have loaded, whatever the file size is, that much only it will be occupied.
Okay, but what is the rest of the 58 MB
It can be used for later
on the block size?
and other
It can be
files.
used for later, right?
Yes, yes,
Other files, like it can be written on the
yes,
same block system, right?
yes, yes.
Okay.
It will not be wasted. It will not be reserved for only for specific to that file.
Okay, Ravi, one more question. What is the security they are implemented in big data
Okay.
as compared to all the databases? In Oracle, we have securities, right? They will give specific access to users, something like that. What about coming to big data?
So coming to this, here also you have user-based roles and group-based roles. Okay, we can also configure them. And if you are asking about the complete cluster security, there is some tools called Kerberos, where you can provide the security for the using Kerberos.
Okay.
So all the commands cannot be they cannot execute all the things, like how we have admin. So here also we have different admin commands. So only admin can perform those operations.
Okay.
Yep.
Even we have restrictions in Hadoop file system
Yep.
as well,
Yep.
right?
We have restrictions.
Okay, thank you, Ravi.
Yeah.
Ravi?
Yeah.
When data is being stored in 135 missions, suppose let's say mission 1 is down,
Mm-hmm.
and it's being stored in 3 and 5 missions.
Mm-hmm.
In the meanwhile, if 1 is up, it is okay, it will store. Otherwise, what is the thing? What will happens?
So it will store only 2 copies. Okay, it will store only 2
Okay.
copies. That is called under replica. It's supposed to be 3 copies, but it is stored only 2 copies. So what we will see, as soon as your minimum replication factor is satisfied, it is okay, the job will success. When your minimum replication factor is not satisfied, the job will fail. That's the scenario 1. The scenario 2, it is your minimum replication factor is satisfied, but it is not satisfied your normal replication factor, which is 3. So it loaded only 2
Yeah.
copies. And what it will do, your name node will make a mark of it. Okay, this block is under replica. This okay, let me show you here, guys. And anyway, I have already set up, and let me show that. As I said, your admin will have a different set of commands. The developer will have a different kind of set of commands, and also our admin can create, our Hadoop admin can create role-based or user-based access. So based on that, he can do. So let's say here I'm going to show you something called. If you see here, there are under replica 4 blocks. It means in my system, 4 blocks are supposed to copy 3 copies or 2 copies. It is stored only less copies than actual copies. So that's why 4 data nodes are under replica. As soon as you execute this, and you will not come to know which data node they are. You will not come to know. Okay. So what you need to do, you have to go with the cluster balancing, and you have to execute a different commands for that. Okay. There will be something called block scanning will be happening in the cluster. So that will be identify what are the blocks are there under replica and what are the blocks are there over replica. There is another scenario called over replica, that also we will talk about it. So like this, you can see your health also. Sorry. You can see your file system health also. So it's saying that my file system is healthy. Okay, so if something goes wrong and something is corrupted, it will says that your that specified path is corrupted. It will say that something is corrupted. So the corrupted blocks also we can remove. Okay, so that we will be seeing in each and every point, each and everything will be executing. And as soon as you execute this FSCK, you can see here, this is a get merge file under replica. The target is 2 copies, but it found only 1 copy. And there is another file, this file, the target is 5, but it found only 1. And there is another file, which is this, the target is 5, but it found only 1. And there is another file, this, the target is 10, but it found only 1. So in your FSCK only it will be showing this information, but in the report it will not be showing what are the blocks are under replica. But when you go with the file check, then only it will be showing you these are the files comes under replica. You go ahead and rectify them. So you have go ahead and launch your balancer, whatever the command you want. It will balance it, because here I have only one data node, one name node. That's why it's not able to balance, or I can say it is not storing into other copy. So in the real-time cluster you'll be having, multiple machines, so that can be balanced, that can be copied from one machine to other machine. The under replica can be resolved. Okay, so that's it guys for today. So we'll continue from Monday. So as I requested you guys,